Hey, what's good, guys? Tom here, and today I want to talk to you about, well, the long tail primarily, and also how to become a kind of dominant market leader in your niche market. So once you understand what the long tail is, and if you don't, go back to video one. It'll give you an overview of what I mean when I'm talking about the long tail. I'm not really going to break that down in today's video. This is kind of a two-part series right now. It might end up being a 3 or 4-part as we get into it. But what I'm going to do today is talk about how we actually take advantage of the long tail. So you have to understand what that is and what that means. If you don't, go back to video one. But today I'm going to show you the how and kind of break that down for you. And we're also going to get into some stuff that is relevant to this, because I can't just tell you how to take advantage of it if you don't understand the premise and the scenario that we're in right now, the thing that's playing out in front of us right now in kind of the online marketing, digital marketing landscape. And it's some of the things we're going to talk about today, including fake traffic, social media platforms, the rise and fall of those, and kind of where that's bringing us as independent creators. First and foremost, let's talk about traffic, and specifically fake traffic. This is actually a statistic I came across randomly. I think it was when I was doing the last video I was doing, and I saved it because I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to talk about this at some point. I didn't think it was going to be today, but here we are. This article states that 51.8% of all internet traffic comes from bots. So this is from hostingfacts.com, so you can check that out. See, they have a bunch more interesting information. A lot of it's not useful. It's mostly just trivia. But this is actually useful for you and I. There's a couple things I highlighted, actually. I circled the amount of websites there are in the world, 1.9 billion. So there'll be 2 billion here shortly. So 52% basically of internet. So over half, one out of every 2 people who are visiting your website are possibly fake, is what that 52% of all internet traffic means, or internet bots. They're fake bots. They're fake. This is fake traffic, okay? So maybe it's coming to your website. Maybe it's coming to your social media platform. I'll talk a little bit about how that manifests in a second. But just know that basically 1 out of 2 people online, in terms of like total traffic online, is fake. It's not real. It's a bot. It's kind of insane. Look at that next line, though. I didn't highlight this, but I did put a little arrow next to it. Google is the world's most visited website, followed by YouTube and Facebook. So think about that. These are the most visited websites. And then look at the line right above it. Half of all traffic is fake. All right. So where does that take us? Well, it takes us to what we're already seeing kind of play out right now, which I'm going to call it the fall of social media. I don't think it's the fall. It's not like social media will cease to exist, but whatever social media is now, it's going to be a completely different thing in a few years. I really do believe that. If not like from a functional utility standpoint, from the standpoint of being an independent creator, a writer, entrepreneur, somebody producing stuff and sharing it. If you do any kind of like blogging, podcasting, content creation, teaching of any kind, if you've been using these platforms to like get leads and sales, like to get new customers, get new clients, or to sell your products or services, that's going to change completely. And here's why. Again, keep in mind the last statistic I just gave you, that half of all traffic is fake. Well, what you're seeing now is the shift where everything is becoming pay to play. So before it was like on Amazon. So I've done a lot of work in Amazon on that space, and in launching books and ranking books high on Amazon, so they're perennial bestsellers. And that was all possible, and I still do it. We still do it, but we've been doing paid traffic a lot now, and it's because, as you can see in this headline here, is Amazon shifting toward pay to play, and what does it mean for brands? It is. So Amazon before used to have a lot of ways that you could take advantage of their ecosystem by launching a book, making sure it was successful, and then ensuring that people who liked books that were similar to yours were able to find yours, right? And you could do all this organically by understanding their algorithms, their search engine. It's a lot of keyword research and testing and tweaking and things like that. And you could effectively rank a book, and it could become a perennial bestseller. And now what's happening is they're removing your ability to do that and basically forcing you to pay for that kind of positioning now, which I'm already doing. So I'm already part of this catastrophe that's happening, because of course there's going to be people like me willing to pay for ads and ad spend, and then that's obviously where the future goes, to the people who are spending money on these platforms. And that we already knew that was the case with Facebook. How many of you have a Facebook page? Do you get any traffic to it? Or how about a Facebook group? Before, it's funny, it's been an incremental slide too. And so if anybody says a slippery slope argument it's false, it's like no, you could see the slippery slope here. It happened already. And you saw how they reduced the reach that Facebook pages had. This is a few years back. I don't know, 3 to 5 years ago or something like that. It's like if you had a Facebook page, they were starting to. Now it would not show up organically. Basically, it would be reduced. You'd have to pay to boost the post. Okay, but then they did the same thing for groups, and then now they're doing the same thing just for your own like regular account. and for everything. Okay, that's the trend with every single one of these social media platforms. They're moving to pay to play. They're moving to pay to play. So look at this. Organic social reach. Is it dead? What's next? Okay, so there's a lot of articles about this. Average Facebook engagement, 2016-17. Here's the other thing. This is another kicker. Engagement is dropping on these platforms across the board. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Again, especially if you account for the fact that probably half of the traffic is fake, it's reducing quite a bit. And so now all of a sudden you're left with what? You're left with this landscape. Well, if I start on these platforms to try to reach my target customer on these platforms, I have to pay to get there. Okay, just know that. And that's the thing. I'm doing this right now on certain platforms. I will pay to reach my audience. I'm not against that. What I'm saying right now to you is that this is the case. Look, if you think you can kind of come on the scene organically or through great content that you'll be found, it's not true. And this leads us to the monopoly on discoverability. I already showed you that, just some of these trends. So you have all the major visited websites. A lot of them are social media platforms or equivalents. I kind of group them all together. They're all owned by the same oligarchy of, it's a tech oligarchy, right? So all these companies they have such a big monopoly, it's hard to actually even fathom just how much of the traffic they get, right? So in the last video I did, it said that 75% of traffic, YouTube receives 75% of traffic in the video space compared to things like Vimeo, Wistia, and a bunch of these other competitors that are also big in their own right. It just shows how dominant YouTube is as a player in that space. So Google is equally dominant, Facebook, also dominant compared to these other, outside of that top 5 or top 10, Twitter and a few others, it's like they get the lion's share, like 50 to 90%. Everybody else gets the scraps. And so that's kind of interesting. So all these platforms have really complete control on discoverability. Can you get discovered? And what's happening is, so you saw the trend. What happens when somebody owns the only route from point A to point B? What happens? They put up a toll booth, right? It's common sense, right? You would do it, I would do it. Maybe I wouldn't do it. Maybe you wouldn't do it. I don't know. These people are doing it, so we'll just roll with it. The point is, they have control from point A to point B, and they're putting up a toll booth. And you see this across the board in everything that they do. And this is why I think a lot of people miss this. They're not paying you to get on the platform. They're still marketing it as if it's free. Start a Facebook group, it's free. Start a Twitter account, it's free. Start a YouTube thing, and it's free. It's like, yeah, it's free to get started on it. It's free to put your stuff on there. But will it reach anybody? No. What they'll do is, when you first start on a platform like this, they'll give you a big boost in the beginning. So you get a lot of energy around it. The first time I did Facebook Live, I had tons and tons of people just drop in. I haven't done one since because I just don't care about the platform personally. But if I did another one, I would not get that same reach. They do this on purpose. So they always give you a big jump in the beginning, which is why launches are so great. And anyway, that would be a different story altogether. We'll get to that maybe in a future video. And one of the ways you actually take advantage of these platforms is by doing just that, because they actually are organized to benefit the person who's just starting something, doing something for the first time. So a lot of times we'll actually have partners do things like that. Hey, you've never done Facebook Live before? Do a Facebook Live for this campaign. And all of a sudden they get a ton of traction. If they had tried to build up a Facebook Live following, I don't know, that would have been just nauseating thing about it. But instead they could do it once. They get all the traffic because Facebook's trying to encourage them to keep doing it. Like, oh yeah, you'll people will keep coming to see you. It's like, no, they probably won't, because here we are. Once they have that path, point A to point B, they have the toll booth. They're going to charge you. So here's cost per click and the increase in prices. This was curated by, you see the URL down there. It doesn't matter. Point is, they showed 2013 to 2016. It went from 92 cents to 214. I think this is on average. So you can see the whole article. It's probably worth a read if you're really fascinated by the stats. I just want to zoom in on this thing. And they conglomerated it based on, or they got these numbers, I think, by this kind of research firm. Looked at 50 top ad spend, buyers on Google or something like that, and looked at the trends. And so there's a bunch of stuff we can get into here. I'm gonna look at the simplest one that applies to what we're talking about today, which is 2013 to 2016. Cost per click, CPC, was 92 cents in 2013 on average, and it increased to $2.14 by 2016. That is a 132% increase. It's on average more than 30% increase a year. All right. So you put your stuff out there on a social media platform. You do it because it's free. You get some traction and you're like, oh, this is good. I'm going to keep doing it. And everybody tells you things take a long time, and they do. It takes a long time to build something worthwhile for sure. But now what you're running into, anybody who's doing this now, is not just playing the game that we all have to play, which is hard work, pays off. You have to be persistent. You have to do good work. That's the game we all have to play. Instead, what you're actually playing a game, it's a little bit different. You're still doing those things, but you're doing it within, like we'll say, a sub game where you're on these people's platforms. They own everything. They own point A to point B. And guess what? They're going to choke off that traffic. And if you do get traffic, half of it's going to be fake anyway. So, okay, I'm probably presenting a pretty, I hope it doesn't come off as like a hopeless situation. But if you look at it, this stuff is insane and it cannot last. So we're in some sort of social media bubble, I think, and it's going to pop if it hasn't already. I mean, writing's on the wall. So how that will impact your business, we'll see where that goes. But the bottom line is this kind of system can't perpetuate itself. Fake traffic, forcing users to pay to get access to said fake traffic. It's like it's all gonna go away. The only reason people keep paying is because they are getting some returns on it. Some people are making some money on it. Most people are not. I think probably most. I wonder if there's actually public stats on this. Maybe I'll do that in a future video. Let me know if you'd like to hear that. If you'd like me to go into more research on that. My guess is, this is just from the campaigns I've worked on. Sometimes I collaborate on bigger campaigns with lots of, with other people, and then they'll have like their own ads people, or we'll hire out like an independent third party, come in and do ads for us. Point is, I've been involved in paid ad campaigns and ad spends where we spent, millions of dollars, and seeing it sometimes pay off, most of the time is a big question mark. Was it useful at all? The reality is like the tracking is sometimes like really inefficient or difficult. And so you can't actually tell if it was actually Facebook ads or wait, was it another source of traffic, like our partner traffic that we were sending that actually got us the sale there. So a small percentage of the time people actually get a good ROI. Most of the time people just break even, or it's just a question mark. We have no idea. And then a percentage of the time it's like, well, that's clearly negative. But it was worth a try, right? That's how ad spend is most of the time for most people, especially when you're doing a launch or rolling out a new product. It's why you have to be really careful. I would only recommend it for people who have like really established platforms and already kind of know what their cost is to sell it, and they can at least test out these platforms. Because I'm not against ad spend, but it's the utility of it, the ROI is just decreasing and decreasing and decreasing for these reasons. Because more people are online now than ever before. That's true. And more people are buying things online than ever before. But there's a couple problems. There's also more competition because of that. And there's more fake traffic than ever before, which makes it harder to actually reach real customers if you're a producer, if you're a creator. And ultimately, platforms have more control than ever before. And they have all your data. And they're charging more and more for it because they can. Because they are the toll booth guys. So there's no such thing as a free social media platform anymore. And so all this, what I'm getting at here is that all this is moving us to the direct-to-consumer. It is moving us to a state where all of us have to kind of be direct-to-consumer brands and businesses, okay? And what that means is you have to be able to communicate with your customers and clients directly. You cannot count on a social media platform to do it. You can't count on a multi-sided marketplace like Amazon or Etsy or something like that to sell your products and products. You can't rely on even Google itself to lead people to you when they're searching a term that you in all rights should be ranking for. It's really difficult then to get into if you try the SEO content game, you're going to run into the same difficulties. Like, yes, it's possible, but it's absolutely an uphill battle. And then also how much of that traffic is actually even real. So this presents us with a bit of a challenge though, because in a world of direct to consumer, how do you get discovered? Because if the only way somebody can discover you is if they already know where you are, they know what you're selling, they know how to reach you, how can they possibly find you? You might think that then you're forced to use something like Facebook or Twitter or whatever. But again, these channels are constricted. They're not optimal. So we need to find new marketing channels. We need to find new avenues that people can actually find you, connect with you, and buy your products and services, because the others are kind of out, or they're not nearly as effective as they used to be. So I call this the sliding technique. And fundamentally, this new marketing channel is basically, how do I find a way that I can have my stuff referred by somebody who has authority in that space already? So what we're looking for is complementary outlets, primarily speaking. And so I'm going to break this down for you. So what is the sliding technique? It's a way of getting your product or service referred by somebody else who already has access to that target market. So they've already maybe leveraged things like Facebook and social and stuff like that. Maybe in the past they built up this audience or whatever they're doing to grow it. And what you're doing is they've already done like a lot of that great hard work. Now what you're going to do is find a way to complement what they're doing and find a win-win that's lucrative and beneficial for all parties, and have them share your product, your book, your services, whatever, with their audience. So what we're usually looking for here, and I'll give you an example. Let's say your long tail niche market is how to write romance novels for profit, right? How to write romance ebooks for profit. Well, that's a niche within a niche within a niche, right? Well, if you go so then you want to think more broadly. Well, what would be a complementary outlet? Well, one example of a complementary outlet would be maybe a website more generically for writers, how to write, how to tell stories, how to think about characters and structures, maybe focus on novels. So just kind of one level more broad. That is a complementary outlet. What would be a competitive outlet? A competitive outlet would be something maybe like somebody else who is also writing about how to write romance novels for profit. But I will say this, that's competitive, so that's not the optimal way to slide in. But I will say I do a lot of collaborative work with competitors because I don't see them as competitors. That's a zero-sum game, and I don't think you lose when you team up with people who are speaking to the same audience. Many ways for that to still be beneficial. That's especially true for somebody, say, if you're doing like entertainment-related stuff, fiction writing, anything like that. You should look for ways to collaborate with people who are competitors because everybody wins when people are sharing even books in the same genre. It's like, it's not a zero-sum game. People read a lot of books. So by you cross-sharing, cross-promoting each other's books and stuff like that, everybody wins. So competitive doesn't mean it's out. It's just a way of categorizing this. And the last way to categorize is just irrelevant outlets. So there's an infinite number of irrelevant outlets. An example here would be websites for goat herders. How could that possibly connect with how to write fiction or how to write romance for profit? It wouldn't fit. So there's tons of irrelevant outlets. But bottom line is you want to look for complementary outlets. You might find a bunch of competitive outlets when you first start kind of thinking through this and trying to plan for it. And that's okay too. Just as you do this, try to kind of bucket them into two buckets. And obviously the irrelevant ones you can just discard. So here's also how to kind of think about the sliding technique and how to make it work. You want to ask yourself, where can you go deep on a subject that somebody has gone more broad or more generic or just kind of touched on the subject more generally speaking? So the example I gave right before this was, if you're teaching romance writing, the more broad category would be just writing in general. Maybe another broad category would be, say, Kindle publishing. Another broad category would be just self-publishing in general. So any websites and platforms where they kind of focus on those kind of things, and you could zoom in, go really narrow on a topic that they probably have, if they've mentioned it at all, they probably mentioned it just in passing or generally. Maybe they had something more in-depth, like focused on it, but I bet it did not go that deep. So your opportunity is to go very deep on a subject, and that complements what they're already teaching. The other opportunity is to go broad where somebody else has gone narrow. So reverse it. Let's say you have the platform that is already more broad right now. Where is somebody already building a platform that's really niche? And can you we'll say elevate their view on things? So if somebody's teaching somebody how to write romance, you can come in and say, well, here's how you sell the romance. And that process of self-publishing for profit or something like that. Well, that could apply to romance, could apply to nonfiction, other types of fiction, sci-fi, whatever. But maybe the way you position that play is by making it specifically for romance authors. And so what's cool about this is you'll notice if you're paying attention to this, your business doesn't have to change. The business model doesn't have to change. What you do does not have to change. What you're doing is just thinking about ways you can complement what is already out there and kind of slide in then and position yourself next to these other outlets that already have audiences that you want to tap into. And the last thing, this is the hardest one to do right, is timely relevance. So basically what you'd be doing is you're trying to find, like say, pop culture references or trends that are happening, and then leveraging those in a timely manner to generate readers, viewers, or customers. That one's tough, and I don't want to get into that today because it's just, it's fleeting. And it's not the thing. You have to, before you should take advantage of that, you should be taking advantage of these other two opportunities because these are the low-hanging fruit, and specifically number one. Okay, so here's an example of the sliding technique in action. I wrote The Complete Guide to Pay What You Want Pricing. So it's a book on pricing and a specific pricing technique or strategy. And as you can guess, it's about how to allow people to pay what you want. This is a subject I discovered a few years back. Thought it was really fascinating. Nobody had written much on it, but I started to do experiments and I ended up writing the book on the subject. And because of that, it was narrow enough where I could then place it into platforms where people were talking about pricing, broadly speaking. So there's plenty of those blogs and podcasts that just talk about pricing and positioning and ways that you can do that. So all of a sudden, this is a very narrow way to go into that. But here are a bunch of other things where these are kind of the marketing verticals where it was complementary and I was able to use the slide-in technique. So on what is now Fizzle is an online business focused platform. And they were Think Traffic at the time when I published a blog post for them. And it was on Pay What You Want Pricing. And so that was complementary, right? Because they talk about online business. Well, here's one way. And they specifically talk to people who I think are creating digital products and those kind of things and courses and whatnot. So it's like, here's a way you could price your digital products and courses. Or here's another example. I was interviewed on Growth Hacker TV. That's mostly for tech startup type people, marketers, growth hackers. Well, here's a growth hack, how you can use Pay What You Want as a growth hack. So I was able to slide in and talk about it there. Actually, they reached out to me, and some of these actually reached out to me, which is super fascinating. Inc. at the bottom too. Inc. is a more broad-based inks, it's business in general. But again, they're not hitting on pay what you want pricing specifically. Maybe they have an article or two on it, but it's super relevant then because here's a new take on it, right? And then I have Side Hustle. So Side Hustle Nation, good friend of mine. And that was the first time we connected, was because I had published this book, and we've been good friends ever since. Nick Loper is a good dude and has a great platform. So he focuses on people who want to make money on the side, who want to start some sort of like a side hustle, on startup, side business, make some passive income online. So again, that's another kind of vertical and another complementary outlet that I can look at and say, oh, here's a way you could use pay what you want pricing in that capacity. So this just scratches the surface. If I wanted to, I could have, and I've done this a little bit, but if I wanted to, I could really just dive in on this. If this was my thing and I really wanted to drive growth for this, I would zoom in on specific areas where this could be applied. And I would then try to hit all those outlets and get them to be sharing my book to their audiences. So one example would be like yoga studios. So my book, The Complete Guide to Pay What You Want Pricing, I talk a little bit about some yoga studios that are doing something like this. Well, I could then go and find all the outlets that are teaching yogis how to run yoga studios. I don't know how many there are. There could be a few, there could be a lot, doesn't really matter. But even if there's 1 or 10, doesn't matter. I could go in and say, hey, here's how you just pay what you want in a certain context for your studio. Maybe you do it once a month, you make it charitable, etc. Right? I would just have to find a way to make it fit and work. Now, guess what? Nobody's going to be competing with me from that platform. There's nobody that will compete for me because this audience is relevant, but nobody's thinking about it that way. That's where you find the best slide-ins, right? That's the best way to use the slide-in technique, okay? So there's a lot of ways to apply this. I just want to give you one example here to make it short, sweet, and simple for you to think about. Okay, so in summary, we're in a pay-to-play world. Like, it's owned by the tech oligarchs. That's what we're in. So these tech companies, they own everything. They commute. They're in their own cartel. So this oligarch of tech companies, and they control everything, right? And it's a pay-to-play world now, and you got to pay to play, and then you got to abide by their rules and all that, and you're just living in it. And it's a game that I don't want to be playing. Like, I think you can take advantage of it. I still do. I'll still leverage their platforms, but I'm not going to play the game that they want me to play, which is trying to, spend all my time, money, and energy on their platforms. And then one day it could just be gone, or it could be, diminished because somebody else is, generating more profit on their platform for them. That happens all the time, guys. Okay. So this is real. It's not like this stuff is just there and it's like, oh, it's whoever works the hardest gets it. It's not. It's way more complex than that. And it's getting harder and harder each day. And I think a lot of people are fooled into playing the game that they're setting out for you to play. Here's a game you should play instead. Okay. The game you should play instead is look for complementary outlets. These are blogs, podcasts, could be YouTube channels, could be listing sites, all sorts of things. And these outlets that speak to your target market. Okay. That's what you want to find. And then you want to slide in with a complementary, useful, consistent, and relevant type offer, something that's relevant and useful for that audience, right? And find a way to position it. I give you an example in the last one. You have to think through this a little bit, and once you start thinking this way, you'll start finding tons of ways to make this work. That's what's so beautiful about it. Because I think usually when I teach this, once people see it, they're like, oh, wow. It like opens up a whole new world. They were like kind of tunnel vision, and they couldn't think outside of what is right in front of them and what everybody's talking about, which is just the worst strategy there is. Everything I'd already mentioned earlier. It's so tough. It's so challenging. It's so expensive. This is like a lens change. And now all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, you'll start seeing these opportunities everywhere. And the simplest, most effective option is always to go narrow, where somebody's going more broad on a personal platform is going more broad or more general on that topic, but still talking to your target market. And here's a pro tip. Always play the long game on this. Search for, outlets where you could see yourself doing something collaborative, like across time. You guys could be working together, not just once, but many times, ways that you could help them out too. This is not just a take. The beauty of this is if you give first, you get the best results. Okay, that's it for today. If you'd like to get more of these videos, sign up to my newsletter, tommorkes.com/newsletter. If you'd like to be apprised of more of these videos as well, I'm going to be testing out more YouTube live streaming and things like that, posting and publishing on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. Go to tommorkes.com/YouTube. And last thing is leave a comment. What is your topic, your niche, your subject, and name one type of outlet that would teach something complementary where you could go deeper or more narrow on a subject that they have only discussed more generally, okay? So I want you to actually think through this exercise and leave a comment. This is your homework. You only get it. My wrestling coach always used to say this. You get what you put in, so the effort you put into the training, the workouts is what you're going to get out. And then that's what's going to manifest on the mat, right? Or in the ring. When I was in boxing, it was the same deal. In any sport that I've ever played, any competition, it's all the same. What you put in is what you're going to get out. So I want you to put in the work right now and do this and leave a comment. All right. That's it for today. Later.